young lady out of Nashville, will be on stage tonight with her crew. Adia Victoria will be at the Riot Room tonight. Right now, though, she's down the hallway at Studio A with Jon Hart live right here on the bridge.
Our guest today, Adia Victoria, has a stunning new record out called Beyond the Bloodhounds and is playing tonight at the Riot Room. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a joy. You're surrounded by. Normally, I kind of hold this moment until later on, but this band is a band of friends. So maybe we should start off with an introduction for the people that are playing with you today.
Absolutely. On the keyboard is Alex Caress. On the bass is Jason Harris. On guitar is Mason Hickman, and on drums, that's Tiffany Minton.
And these are people that you sort of drew in as friends first, bandmates second.
Yeah, it was kind of a mixture of the two.
Is that about just survival on the bus?
I mean, bus, I wish. The van.
Yeah, van.
I mean, it's a very delicate balance. I feel like each of us, we play our own part to make a complete whole. And, you know, I feel at this point, I told them last week, we're kind of like an army now. We're a little squad.
Yeah. You know, it is a brilliant record, and it's a record, the songs are all based on your personal experiences, and when I was researching, I flashed on a little note that your mother warned you about feeling too much when you were a child, and that's turned out to play to your benefit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was a very sensitive child, and I kind of vacillated between extremes in my emotions. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I went to the Fine Arts Center in Greenville, South Carolina. And the director at the school, our first day there, he said, "You're artist, which means you're going to feel a lot more. You're going to love more, but you're going to feel a lot more pain. So good luck. Find a way to deal with that. Bye."
And, you know, it's funny because I think that you knew that you were, maybe that was the thing that put words to it, but you kind of knew early on that you were an artist. It's just, how is that art going to come out? And in that experience that you just described, for a while it was dance.
Yes, that was that's what I studied at the Fine Arts Center. But as a child, I always had this strange kind of attraction to singing, performing in my church and at school. And I just loved singing and telling stories to people. And I liked the relationship that established between performer and listener. And it was through singing that I kind of found my voice and my autonomy. So after my dancing years, I picked up a guitar, I started writing songs, and then I just started playing out wherever I could.
Now, the writing thing goes back to when you were about 5?
Mm-hmm. I started writing poetry after I read Bad Bad Black Sheep. Because I liked the musicality of the words, and I was just like, that's really fun and really cool. So I just started writing little poems.
Wow, it's like, you know, seminal early influences, but Baba Black Sheep, that's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. That's like beyond great. Yeah. That's a nugget right
still
there.
One of my favorites.
That's absolutely beautiful. You know, it's so funny when I was researching, you know, your performances are one thing, your interviews are another, the persona that you take on Facebook sometimes. I feel like there are a lot of different people in you.
Yeah. That's true. They're all great.
So you kind of moved the persona that we see on stage to the stage and kind of out of your personal life a little bit. You quarantined her there.
I try to, but sometimes she spills through in like really inappropriate ways. She's kind of like my ego and you know, all these like disordered parts of my personality. But I give her a home on the stage, and I don't know, sometimes it's hard to keep it all straight.
Because it can be a little ferocious.
Yeah. Life can be ferocious.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I want to go back real quickly to the poetry thing. You've continued to write poetry as well. Are you going to publish?
Yeah, last year I actually published a little book of poetry. It was a collaboration between myself and one of my good friends, Jesse Zazu from Those Darlings. We were just like, we got all these poems and all this art. So we just put it together, printed out about 100 copies, and they sold out like pretty quick. So it's something that I would definitely like to get back into. But I live in a van right now.
Yeah.
So it's not the most inspiring environment.
You live, You experience and then you write afterwards.
Absolutely.
So the poetry thing, when you were getting ready to go off on one tour, I don't know if it was this tour, wasn't able to figure out the timeline perfectly, but to kick it off, you had your songwriter friends come and open for you with spoken word, and it made them fairly uncomfortable, at least in a few instances.
Oh yeah. I mean, they were very brave. It was our friend Daniel Pujol, Tristan, and Margot Price, and they all did. They shared this incredible poetry, and I was like, this would be really cool for a night in Nashville. Like, let's share something that we're not comfortable with, because everyone in Nashville wants to be on a stage, but not everyone wants to be on a stage just sharing words. And so, I saw their knees shake and their hands shake, and I was just like, yes, it's working. But, at the end, they expressed gratitude that they had the chance to share.
We have Adia Victoria in the studio today. The new album is Beyond the Bloodhounds, and they're playing tonight at the Riot Room, and we'd love to hear a song if we could.
Absolutely. The song's called Dead Eyes.
I can see the sun rise and set anew. I've seen the sun rise and set anew. It said anew. You say you're looking for something to make you feel anew. You don't believe in God, hot whiskey will do.
Adia Victoria live in the Bridge Studios. That was great.
Thank you.
We've been playing that one a lot. One of the great things about doing these is that you get to do the deep dive on the artist and find out things you didn't know. And
Dig deep.
Yeah. And we've been playing this song for a long time, but that song is actually sort of a flip side of an R.L. Burnside song.
Yes.
It's a poor Black Maddie.
Yes.
And you decided to do it from her perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, Poor Black Maddie is it's an old blues kind of standard. She's an old character that kind of weaves her way through different songs and different artists. And her story basically is that she's this poor girl, black girl. She's drunk, makes a fool out of herself. She's just rambling around town, just kind of a joke. And of course, men use her sexually and this and that. And she never settles down because no one ever wants to give her a constant space in their life. So I thought it'd be cool if I told the story of like what made her that way, like why is she rambling around like drunk from like bed to bed and like dangerous. Like I wanted to humanize this character because I identified with her a lot, and I didn't trust the men that were telling me her story. So I kind of took my own experience, like losing faith in God, like becoming very disenfranchised, very jaded, cynical, drinking too much and fooling around and just, kind of reveling in your own like humanity, despite society, just because you can.
You talked about the fact that you were raised in the church and you fell in love with hymns there. But when you come to this as a performer, it really is about the fact that you want to put your life out there, partly because you weren't finding lives like your own being represented.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I found growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, I was terrified of my own humanity. I was so scared of doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing and making like this God in the sky, like put a tally on like under like the bad column it gave me such anxiety that I just retreated inside of my own head and I was so scared. And so when I got into the arts, performing arts, I just felt finally like I can enjoy being inside of my skin. I can enjoy relating to people in an honest way. And I think it saved me from becoming just a total like agoraphobic, lady.
Yeah, even though you rejected the religious upbringing, it was really kind of all you knew.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's that process of self-discovery that everybody goes through in their 20s, but, you had a really healthy dose of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I made the conscious decision as a 10-year-old when my mom took us out of the church and out of the Adventist school that I wanted to find my own meaning. Like I wanted to find my own place in the world, and I didn't want it to be contingent upon like going to heaven or going to hell. And then in a more secular version of that, it's like I didn't want it to be based on being popular or pretty or liked, because I felt with that there was a loss of control, that the way I felt about myself was dependent upon other people telling me what to feel. So, as a little girl, I was just like, I'm just going to read and I'm going to learn and I'm going to go out and I'm going to figure out things that make me happy and follow my bliss. And
I mean, in a way, it felt like you were looking for the things that you weren't getting from human beings in books.
Yes, absolutely. Those were my friends. Like those were my confidants, were these characters that I met in books and going out in nature and being alone, being with my little sister. Like we would just go out and be like, we want to go where there's been no one ever before. And we grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, so we would like go on these hikes and be like, I bet there's never been anybody here before, and just owning that experience of just being completely untainted and untouched by mankind.
So you developed a taste for solitude.
Yeah.
And now you got 5 people in a van.
Yeah. I told you, I'm a woman of extremes.
I love irony.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I love irony. It's just the best. So, the religious, upbringing was pretty strict. And it was around the time that you separated from the church that you came into connection with popular culture, and you fell in love with Nirvana, and you fell in love with Fiona Apple, and you fell in love with your mother's jazz. That had to be a bunch of doors opening simultaneously.
Yeah, this all happened when I was around 14, 15, freshman, sophomore in high school. And the internet was taking off at that point. Like there was high-speed internet, so I could like download songs and find legally. But it just kind of, I had my whole mind blown open. And I remember the Saturday nights that I would sit at home and listen to Marian McPartland piano jazz. And I would just sit in the dark and like imagine that I was like in New York City, like her music took me there. And then I would listen to like Miles Davis, and he took me to Paris, like rambling around St. Louis, like these places where I'd never been before. And Fiona Apple, like that was the soundtrack to me, like driving around with my friends at 15, smoking cigarettes, and like all we had was this little like Pontiac, and that was our world, and we could like be ourselves and sing our songs and smoke our cigarettes with her.
You had a degree, and I think part of it was that sort of not necessarily knowing how you fit in, but you just had you wanted to fly away, and you kind of did. You scraped up the money and went to Paris.
Yes.
That was incredibly brave. You were what, 17?
18.
18? And you lived there you just had very basic French.
Yeah, very basic French. The first trip I took was for a few weeks in December of 2004, and I I started saving up money after George W. Bush was reelected, and I was so heartbroken because I campaigned for Kerry in Greenville, South Carolina. And then when George Bush got reelected, I was like, I gotta go. So I saved my money, and I was the first person in my family to cross the Atlantic Ocean that way.
Yeah.
And I just spent my time there in just complete silence, just taking in like this strange world that was not my own, and there was no marking of myself anywhere there.
Well, at least you had the solitude thing, so that was comfortable in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Watch the river a lot.
Absolutely.
So you came back, and I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details because I'm guessing that there might have been another Paris trip in there somewhere.
Yes, there were quite a few.
Yeah. At one point in Paris, you sort of holed up and did a lot of songwriting.
Yes. This was in 2012. I was in school at the time, and I was accepted into a philosophy program to study abroad, and I couldn't afford it. So I was just like, I'm just going to take my student refund money, and I'm going to go over there for a few months. And I sat in an apartment, and I just wrote a lot of these songs, and I just had complete quiet, and I was just inside of my own head, and it just gave me this completely different perspective, a completely different relationship with myself and my art. And I needed my art to keep me company, to keep me sane. So I was dependent upon it, and I wrote some of my favorite songs over there.
You know, after that first time in Paris when you came back, you just almost immediately turned around and went to New York because you were still sort of fleeing from the South.
Yes.
But part of that experience was sort of letting you know that however you felt about being a Southerner, you were one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I moved from my mother's house to Brooklyn, New York. It was the first time I lived outside of her house. An extreme decision. You know, I was a high school dropout. I didn't know anybody, and I just spent a lot of time shell-shocked on the train. And the first night I got into Brooklyn, I asked the lady at a restaurant who's waiting on me, I asked her for a sweet tea, and she gave me just a plain iced tea and some sugar packets, and I was just devastated. I was like, nothing about this is right, but here we go. I chose this life.
It is the little things that make people snap, you know? So after a couple of years in New York, you went back to Atlanta, and it was actually at the age of 21 in Atlanta that you picked up the guitar.
Yes.
You had a telemarketing job,
Yes.
but you kind of stole a little bit of time here and there while you were working to learn how to play the guitar online.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of my best friends, she left me a Washburn guitar, an acoustic, and this was around the same time that I was discovering the blues. And it was just me and my cat, Mortimer, and the guitar. And I would work for 8 hours a day, you know, selling people cable phone and internet, but like switching back and forth on the computer screen, like looking at chord shapes and then like scribbling them down because I didn't have a computer or internet at home. And I would just go home and like learn these chord shapes, and then I would write songs to what I was learning. And for like the first year, the only audience that I had was Mortimer, and I would just sing to him.
Was he appreciative?
He was a cat.
Adia Victoria is in our studios. You can find out more at adiavictoria.com. The new album is Beyond the Bloodhounds. The band is performing tonight at the Riot Room, and we'd love to hear another song if we could.
Absolutely. This song is actually about that cat. It's called Mortimer's Blues, and I wrote it after he passed.
See said you're so pretty, why won't you smile? But I've got some things on my mind I don't much feel like smiling about.
Adia Victoria in the Bridge Studios. That was Mortimer's Blues. And going to be playing tonight at the Riot Room, so make sure and get out and get a chance to catch the band. And Beyond the Bloodhounds, the new album. I take it that Mortimer was not particularly an attractive animal.
No, he was fat and black, and he had fangs that protruded from his mouth and like missing teeth. And I stole him from PetSmart. Because they were like, if he doesn't get a home, we have to put him down. So I was just like, okay. And I just stole him.
you liberated him.
That's true. That's true.
It was a run to freedom.
Yes.
So that's all good.
That's right.
It's all good. The electric guitar, you talked about learning the guitar, but you started out in acoustic, but you moved to electric because your songs required more muscle.
That's right. I made the changeover. I don't know. I remembered the musicians that I enjoyed watching, and I liked that component of, I don't know, power, I guess. Not to say that there's not power in an acoustic, but I was looking for something different. And then, of course, too, it became an issue of the weight of the guitar. So I needed something light that I could tour with and that I could move around quickly on. And my guitarist, Mason, he had an SG and he let me use it, and he had a Bigsby on it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So I just went and copied it, and I got my own, and I put a Bigsby on it.
There you go. You talked about learning the chords and, the acoustic guitar, and you also talked about learning the blues, really finding the blues,
Yes.
which is maybe philosophically the easiest entry point for you.
Yes.
But somewhere in there, before the blues, you were all about Johnny Cash and Hank Williams.
Oh, yeah, I'm still all about those guys. Yeah, my girlfriend who left me the guitar, she actually initiated me into country music when I was about 22. And we started with Johnny Cash and Hank and Patsy and Loretta. And I just remember falling in love with their storytelling, like the humor in it and the simplicity of it, especially Johnny Cash. I was just like, you've got like 3 chords and you're taking me like through like this whole world of yours. And I like that. I like the no BS approach of it. I liked his technique as a writer, that he used like parts of his world that were so true and he made them universal.
And there's a lot of commonality in what you just said between country and the blues.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you go back to like the 20s when these people were all working together and stuff, they were singing the same song. They were going through a lot of the same struggle. Like they're poor, they drink too much, their man left them, their woman left them, the man doesn't understand. And, I'm as influenced by one as I am the other.
You sort of came to the blues in the way a lot of people have over the last few years through the Black Keys and the White Stripes.
Yeah.
But then immediately started tracing it back.
Yeah, I was like, I know you guys didn't invent this, so I want to see where you got this from. And then I went back and I found like these songs that they were just like borrowing from and covering and kind of appropriating, because I'd never heard of Junior Kimbrough. I'd never heard of Skip James, but it's like I see their influence in your work, but you guys are millionaires and like you're praised as like the modern blues. And it's just like, there was so much stuff that was being spoken about by these older blues musicians that, God bless them, Jack White and Dan Auerbach, they know nothing about. And so I was immediately turned on and kind of radicalized by the socio-political aspect of the blues, like what world these people were living in that inspired their art. Like there's no way that, the White Stripes or the Black Keys could even fathom understanding that.
So, given gender and race, you were also pretty drawn to Victoria Spivey.
Absolutely. Yeah, she like kind of gave me the kick in the butt that I needed to start writing blues songs. And her story, like when she was 12, she was playing in whorehouses in Houston. She told them she was 16, but she was there playing the piano. She kind of discovered Bob Dylan in a way. Like she gave him one of his biggest breaks early in his career. And it's just like, nobody knows who you are. Like, all these people are like appropriating your genius, and nobody is like paying you your due. So that's what I wanted to do. I started learning her songs, Detroit Moan, TB Blues, and I felt empowered by her.
You know, Detroit Moan reminds me an awful lot of one of your songs about being stuck in the South.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that was around the period where I stopped fighting the South, and I was like, I'm going to get inspired by the South. I'm here. I can't go anywhere. I don't have enough money to leave. So I'm going to tell people what it's like, really what it's like being from here. And Detroit Moan was about, you know, a young woman who went to Detroit to make it, and she failed, and she ended up eating beans and like knocking on people's doors. And I just remember feeling for the first time in my life, like, here's this black woman telling me about being poor and about being like busted, but there's a sense of humor to it. And she turned that into art. And it wasn't about her pleasing a man or having money or, you know, the things that we deem valuable. You know, she made art in spite of all of these other external factors. And I love that, because I was a poor black woman in the South at that time.
So by this time you found yourself and you found the way to express it.
Yes.
But you're expressing it to your cat.
That's right.
Now, your mom and your sister would occasionally like drag you in to play a song.
Yeah.
But that's still a pretty small crowd.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter
Yeah.
sort of pushed you out a little bit.
Yeah, I decided in the summer of 2014, after Trayvon Martin happened and right before Eric Gardner was killed, I was like, I need to release this song. I need people to hear my story. You know, maybe it's my ego, but I was like, I matter. Like, when they were saying Black Lives Matter, I was like, my inner life matters, and I need to speak up for myself and not wait for someone to come along and validate me. And I released a song on my own, and it was after that, you know, things started picking up for me.
And, you know, it's like you found yourself, you found the way to tell the story, but you've also along the way found a way to be an inspiration for other people, you know, to put that life on the stage that you were not finding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the greatest reward for me is when we play and there's a young like woman of color like looking up at me like, there you are, and I'm looking down at her like, there you are. And it's just like there's no one else in the room, because I'm singing these songs and I know that she understands exactly where I'm coming from, and I would never ask her to be anything other than who she is right there in that moment. Like, that's enough. You're enough. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be flawless. Like, this right here is enough. You're a human being. And that's what makes you matter. Not the numbers in your bank account, not whose chain you have around your neck.
You know, I just love the album title, and I'd love for you to tell the story of where that came from.
Absolutely. Beyond the Bloodhounds came from a passage in the slave narrative, Incidences in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. She was this young woman in North Carolina. She was a slave, and her master was particularly brutal and obsessed with her. And she knew that she had to get away from him, but she had 2 young children, so she couldn't make the run to freedom. And her grandmother, who purchased her own freedom, lived in a cabin on the master's plantation. And so Harriet came up with this idea to hide inside the crawl space between the roof and the ceiling, which is about 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, for 7 years. And she had friends that had gone north to freedom, to like New York and Canada, and she would have them write her master from these locations so he would never know where she was. And the whole time she's in his yard, like on his property. But she just talked about the only thing that kept her going was knowing that she had to get she and her babies beyond her master's bloodhounds to freedom. And I just remember like closing the book and being like, well, that's the name of my first album.
Beyond the Bloodhounds. I'm assuming it'll be at the merch table tonight at the Riot Room.
Yeah, we might have 1 or 2.
You know, the other thing that I wanted to say to you is that in doing the research, it was so funny because depending on who had written or who had done the interview, they were always looking through a particular filter. And some people call you a country artist. Some people call you a blues artist. Right. And you can't miss the rock and roll, and you can't miss the jazz in it. Right. And it is a very varied record that kind of, even though you see yourself best through the blues filter, this is like just you.
Yeah.
You know, it's just you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was fortunate to work with a producer who, Roger Moutinho, who gave me the time to live life and then come into the studio and be like, this is what that moment felt like and this is what it sounds like to me. And we would, spend the time to plot out these songs and bring them to life and let them be their own thing. And we didn't rely on one genre or the other. And I think the country thing comes from me being from Nashville. I'm writing a song called Stuck in the South. So people were like, oh yeah, country, but I don't lean to one genre for my sound. I follow the blues as far as like its socio-political implications and what it means to be a blues artist, but I'm not sitting here writing like barbecue blues licks, Now
don't just barbecue in Kansas City.
No, we're actually going to go get some barbecue after this. But I want to push the blues forward. I want to expand what people consider the blues. I want to keep that conversation going. I don't want the blues to become this static thing in the past that we've already done.
Adia Victoria in our studios. We'd love to hear one more song if we could.
This last song is called Howling Shame, and it's about growing up a poor black girl in the South.
Followed
Adia Victoria on the bridge, playing tonight at the Riot Room. The new CD is Beyond the Bloodhounds. You know, we do these in studios to introduce artists to audience, and this has been really time well spent today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, go catch her tonight at the Riot Room. Adia Victoria. Find out more at adiavictoria.com.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.